Nick, have you ever been to a city
Nope.
before?
I live in a swamp.
End of video. Have a great day, everyone.
A rat
I'm Mike.
person. What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
So, Sewage Smith over here, and I'm Mike, and we are talking about games that specifically have a city name as the title
And
or
they're
as the main part of the
about
title.
a city.
They're about a specific place. There's
Yes.
many games that fit this, many games that fit regions and countries
Yes.
as well. Obviously, a ton of games that are
We'll
city
probably
games.
do a thing about specific country games.
Yes,
yeah.
so we are going to talk about just 10 of them. Now, here's the thing. We haven't played them all.
We haven't played them all.
There's so many out
And there's
there.
a ton of like classic Euro games
So
that are
many.
set in specific European cities. It's like kind of a meme at this point.
Yeah.
And so we have not played them all. So just know, put us down in the comments below. I really want to try a lot of these older Euro games that
us
we
up.
don't know about. So please let us know.
us
These are
up.
going to be our top 10 games that are based on a city.
All right, don't add us now. We're starting off number 10 with Brass Birmingham. Now listen, the reason is Nick has only played Brass Birmingham once. It was a very long time ago, and he did not have a good time. The first time I played it, I did not have a good time. I have since played it a lot. I love it. It's one of my favorite games now. I know we'll get Nick into it eventually, but he's not there yet. So it's just number 10 because this is really my pick, to be perfectly honest with you. But this is a great game. Set in the UK during the Industrial Revolution, kind of two halves as we build up in the Industrial Revolution, where you are playing cards to build buildings, build, in the first half, canal ways to connect cities together, then railways in the second half of the game, to kind of develop your board and take tiles off and stuff to get the more valuable stuff, and to ship goods around. That is what we are trying to do. What's really interesting and cool about this game is the highly interactive nature, but it's not mean per se. There might be something where I have beer on one of my tiles and maybe I want to use that beer to do a delivery and someone uses that beer and now my tile is empty. That's a bummer possibly, but we do ultimately want and need these tiles to get emptied of their goods so that they can flip over and become more valuable, give you income as your kind of reputation grows. And so I love the fact that everyone is mooching off of everyone else. If all these industries are built up in the city of Birmingham, for example, well, I'm going to provide the railways and stuff to that city. So that's just kind of reflecting of, well, you want to get these goods out there, well, you got to use my rails. I built these here. So I'm, again, mooching off of what someone else has done. It's a big game of mooching, really. I think it's fascinating. I love that it's highly interactive, but not cutthroat per se, because it's mutually beneficial for us to interact. I just want to make sure that I benefit a little more than you do. And like, that is just really, really cool. It's just a fascinating game. I know we're going to get Nick on board. Everyone in the comment, tell Nick to try it. Tell him to finally try it. That's number 10, Brass Birmingham.
Number 9 is a city that's actually very close to where we grew up in Northern California, and this is a game called Coloma. Coloma is about the city of Coloma, which is like an old west town. You can go there now. It's very, very cool. And this is a simultaneous selection game where you're going to be choosing one of the actions you want to do, and you want to be the only one choosing that action, because if you are the only one to choose that action, you get to do the boom version of that action, which essentially is going to be a better version of it. But one thing that's nice about this is if you more than one person chooses the same thing, you just don't get the boom action. You still get the main action, so it's not like you're completely like done. You're just like, oh, well, that's fun. I have no turn now. I don't really like games that do that. This one's not like that. It's just nice to be the only one there. And you are going to be doing a whole bunch of different stuff. You are building out the river and kind of exploring the river. You are moving your tent around all this kind of big area, kind of exploring the area. There are also a whole bunch of bandits coming into town because we're in the Old West time, so you can go out there and pew, 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 and shoot them. You're getting cards. Those cards will do a whole bunch of different stuff and score you points. It's really fun. There's all these different kind of avenues you can go in the game, but it's based all around that simultaneous selection. I really love simultaneous selection games because I love that kind of tension in those where you're like, please don't choose action 5. Please don't choose action 5. Please, please, please. You're like, oh God, you chose it. I really needed that boom action. Oh my gosh. Okay. How am I going to do this now? And so I love that kind of stuff. It's one of my favorite things in games. I wish more games did simultaneous selection really well like that. And it's just a blast. And so I really like Coloma because it's a really fun game, but it's also close to our heart because, again, we've like been to Coloma because it's close to where we grew up. And that's also cool, like when a game is based in a city that you're from, or at least a city you're nearby. So Coloma is really, really good. Kind of super went under the radar in our opinion. Not many people have played this game or know about this game, but it's really, really fun, and give it a shot.
Number 8 city game is Barcelona. You'll never guess where it's set. This is a game where it's kind of in the expansion period in Barcelona, where the original city kind of contained within like the medieval, the military walls, is now expanding. We're making more room because the population is skyrocketing here. We need more space, and there's this kind of beautiful time where there was a grand vision for kind of equitable living, where the richest folks in the city and the poorest folks of the city would all have a good place to live. They'd all have access to green spaces and parks and wide roads, so there's just a little bit more breathing room and things aren't as cramped and stuff, and really kind of bringing folks to a higher quality life. This, of course, didn't really play out that way, and it's reflected in the game where you are placing citizens out into different intersections of your kind of streets and blocks and things like that, and then based on the types of citizens that surround that block of your turn, you might build a building and things like that. And the types of buildings you build, we're going to have certain amounts of building versus green space. Obviously, the less green space you have, the more kind of reputation you'll have, because it's kind of in that initial romantic, probably, vision of how the city could be, making more room for the, the have-nots of the world. This game is just really fun and interesting. It's snappy and quick, and as you place out citizens from buildings and stuff, you're going to be filling these tracks, which will trigger scoring and trigger the end of the game as well. You are putting out roads and stuff, again, as you're trying to kind of develop this part of the city. You want to get trams going and things, and it's all with this kind of beautiful, again, vision for what a future could be, and it's one that, like, we hope to have someday for real. So there's stuff like that. There's a bunch of kind of things you can go for as you build up the Sagrada Familia as well, giving you bonuses. There's ways to combo stuff. Your actions, based on the intersections that you do, will pertain to the edge of the board. And so the kind of combination of actions you trigger as well as building stuff can be really, really interesting. There's a lot of spatial fun elements to this game, and it looks very nice to boot. So that is Barcelona.
Number 7 is going to be Paris, la Cité de Lumière. I'm sorry, French-speaking people, for that, but it's Paris City, the City of Lights is what it is. This is a 2-player game that's very compact. It's in that kind of classic square box, kind of like this size box, Cave Runner, Cave vs. Cave, also a good game. It's in that classic box, but you actually play inside the box, which is really, really cool. And so it's got a pretty small footprint. And basically what this game is it's a 2-player game where you essentially are doing kind of area control-ish stuff, where you're putting out different colors of cobblestones, either blue or orange or purple, and purple can be either color, basically. And if I'm the blue player, Mike's the orange player, actually that'd be switch. I'm orange, Mike's always blue. And so you're basically trying to build out kind of blocks of your colors, and you also want these blocks of colors around these street lamps, because you're eventually going to be building buildings on top of these blocks, and you want these buildings to be lit up by the City of Lights. If you're in the dark, no one can see these buildings, and so everyone hates them. You want to be in the light. And so the game is broken into like 2 halves. The first half, you're putting out these cobblestones, trying to kind of, you're jockeying for position in the city with these colors of cobblestones. In the second half, you're going to be putting out these buildings, which are like polyomino shapes, like kind of Tetris L's and stuff. But when you put them down, you can only put them on top of your cobblestone colors or purple cobblestone. So again, purple kind of bridges that gap between those two. So you're trying to get these blocks of colors in the first half, and then trying to put down these buildings in the second half, which are going to give you points based off of how much light they're around. These light they kind of act as like multipliers, basically. And so it's this really interesting game where the whole first half of the game, you're just setting yourself for the whole second half of the game. And there's also these postcard cards that are out on the table that kind of give you a special action light to mess with some stuff. It's really, really fun. Very, very tight and tactical game that, again, plays in the box. When you're putting all these cobblestones down, you put them in the box. It's really, really cool in that way. It's got a great look, great city. It's just beautiful. It's just a cool, cool game. The expansion's really fun as well. I don't know. I like games that are kind of have a very distinct halfway point, and when those halves are pretty different like that, I think it's really, really cool. And Paris, the City of Lights, Paris, la Cité de Lumière, is really good.
Number 6 is Yokohama. So this is a game where you are in Japan and you are rolling around with the president and their assistants, and you are going to different action spaces, really locations, to trigger those actions. And the amount of strength that you have, essentially the power you have at that action, will give you a better version of that action, whether it be collecting resources, turning in resources, and things like that. There's also kind of a route building element because the board is a bunch of these locations randomly assorted in a sort of pyramid-like structure. And to move your president around to ultimately activate a certain tile, you have to go through spaces that contain your assistants only. So you have to kind of build a pathway to the thing that you want, and then you're going to kind of take off your assistants and things from that action. So you kind of then need to rebuild and get your assistants back out onto the board and kind of build up your assistants in a certain area to get as strong of an action as possible. So I really like the idea of like planning ahead, moving my pieces around, and then being able to kind of chain together a series of kind of powerful turns and then kind of rebuilding out those routes and then continuing on. It's just really kind of fascinating and something I haven't seen much of, where there's essentially a worker placement action selection mechanism that's kind of put into such a spatial puzzle as well. That is Yokohama.
Number 5 feels like we have to have it on here. This is Carcassonne. Carcassonne's really good, and it kind of feels like we have to have it on here because Carcassonne is such a classic where you are building out Carcassonne in the region kind of around Carcassonne where you are putting out tiles. These tiles are going to have like grass on them, just kind of land. You're also going to have roads, monasteries, and then parts of cities on them. And you are essentially trying to build out these roads and these cities and claim them with your meeples. And then when that road ends, like it has a stopping point and a starting point, that road will then score, and you're going to get 1 point per tile that road is long, basically. And if you're the only meeple on that road, you will score all of those points. But there are ways where people can come in and kind of snipe your road and things like that. And the city is basically the same way, except for you're building kind of a big circle because you want the city walls around the city. And the city is going to be 2 points per tile in that city. But again, once someone is in a city, you cannot just come in there and put your meeple in that city. But if the city is starting here, you have all these kind of square tiles. If the city is starting over here and I start my city over here and they just happen to merge together, then we both score points for that city. Or if I have more of my meeples in there than you do, I will score the points and you won't. So there's a lot of jockeying for position like that. If you get a monastery, you want to surround that monastery with tiles. It doesn't matter what tiles. It's just a classic. There are a whole bunch of different kinds of Carcassonne. There's like Carcassonne Hunters and Gatherers, which is really, really good. There's like Carcassonne South Seas and Amazonas, and there's also now Mists over Carcassonne, which is kind of like a spoopy Halloween version with ghosts that I actually really, really enjoy. I think Mists over Carcassonne might be my favorite version, but nonetheless, the OG Carcassonne, you're building up the Carcassonne region. It had to be on the list. It's just a classic.
Number 4 is a game that has brought us a lot of interest over the years. This is Orléans. Orléans is obviously a very highly touted game. You can get realistic resources at the BGG store. I highly recommend you do that. It's really great. But Orléans is a bag building game. So there are games with deck building elements where you're going to draw out certain cards and you hope to get the right cards at the right time to pull off a monster turn. This is doing that same thing, but with a bag of these chips. We can get upgrade chips. Also the BGG store, highly recommend. And you're pulling out chips out of a bag, your followers, and then those followers, the different colors and stuff, will go on to certain actions, and once that action space is full of the required amount and type of followers, you can do that action on a turn. So you are doing all sorts of stuff. For one, there's events every round that you're kind of trying to mitigate and deal with. Some are good, some are bad. So you're trying to make sure that you kind of like weather those storms. You are route building over land and water to different cities, hoping to collect goods along the way, hoping to build out your kind of settlements in those cities, and collect those different resources to be able to turn in for money and things like that. So there's just all these kind of things to explore. You're obviously going to be getting more workers as you play through the game, and maybe I want to do one type of action over the other, so I want to kind of make sure I get a bunch of these types of workers, and the more you kind of invest in an area with types of workers, you get to bump up these tracks and kind of get instant bonuses or ongoing powers or the ability to play more chips per round, things like that. So there's just so much to focus on in this game and think about. And it's been very well supported with expansions. There's expansions that provide solo modes, expansions that provide like 2-player only experiences, cooperative experiences. So there is, if you want to go in that direction, start getting these expansions, a lot to explore. And all of it's been really kind of cool. So Orléans is just really fun. Pull these chips out of the bag based on the colors you get. How do I maximize what I'm doing? I need to collect citizen tiles so I can go up the book track and maximize the scoring there. But you know, you're kind of dealt what you're dealt, and you got to figure out how to best plan for the future and kind of play for the now. That is Orléans.
Number 3 is going to be Lisboa, which is about the city of Lisbon in Portugal. And the city of Lisbon, after some tough times, we will say, the city has kind of been broken down. There's rubble everywhere, and you're basically trying to go in there and clear out this rubble, the flooding, and the fires. All these things did happen in Lisbon. And you're basically trying to clear them out and then put out new buildings and score those buildings. This is a big Vital Lacerda game, and we finally got this game. We've been wanting this game for a while. We played it once a very long time ago, and been wanting to try it again. We finally got it, and we played it recently. I was like, oh, that's right, Lisboa is incredible. It's a very Vital Lacerda game. We have a bunch of stuff to kind of track. You're putting out these you're choosing which actions you're going to do, and again, trying to clear that rubble. You're trying to make essentially sets of rubble. You're trying to get your buildings and certain roads to do the best they possibly can. It's all these different things to think about. But for a Vital Lacerda game, I would say that it feels a little bit more approachable than a lot of them are. Vital Lacerda is known for making very big, very heavy games. And I feel like this one is one of the more accessible ones, one of the lighter ones. Again, light for Vital Lacerda is still pretty darn heavy, but it's really, really good. It's also got great Ian O'Toole art. I feel like this is one of the games that really put Ian O'Toole on the map. I really love the look of Lisboa. It's very, very cool. I enjoy games that are set in cities in general. This whole list is about that, but just also set a specific time like this one is, where you're trying to clean, and I enjoy ones where you're like really actively trying to clean up the city, make it better. There's so many different things to do in this game. It's really, really great, and we cannot wait to explore it more. We've only played it a couple times now, but it's already super high on these kinds of lists because it's just an absolute banger. And I think as we play it more and more and more, it's just going to become one of our favorite games. As a lot of Vital Lacerda games are becoming that way, Lisboa is one of the best. It's outstanding.
Number 2 is Teotihuacan, not really a city that's around anymore. At least the setting of this game is in the ancient times and stuff, but we still have a lot of remnants from that time here still today, and you can still go to Teotihuacan. This game for me personally was my first foray into a new weight of Euro games, a more mid-heavy weight Euro game. And so it holds a special place in my heart. So this is a game where you are moving your workers that are represented by dice around a board, going around and around and around in a clockwise fashion, or around this rondel. And where you land, you can go 1, 2, or 3 spaces around. Wherever you land is going to be the action you take. You're going to land on an action board. Oftentimes, you want to have a bunch of your workers there, and also every time you use a worker, they're going to get to power up and become stronger. They start off as 1, so they don't have any skills, and then become a 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a 5, and then eventually ascend and come back as a 1. So you want to ideally have all of your dice bunched up on the same spot, and they all are 5s. It's the strongest possible way you can do the action. If you do line that up, you're going to get a much better version of that action, whether it be collecting resources, going to build the pyramid, decorate the pyramid, and things like that. You're going to get better rewards for kind of the amount of dice you have and typically the value of those dice. So this game is so fun because, of course, I want to bunch up those dice. But I also need to be going around to different action spots to collect resources and stuff. It's not useful for me to go to the pyramid building space if I have no resources to build the pyramid. So I need to make sure I'm moving around, but also staying bunched up if possible. There are discovery tiles that you can get by bumping up temple tracks and things like that. It's a board and dice game through and through in that way. It is the birth of the T games, really, from Board and Dice. And you are making use of these discovery tiles, which might give you masks for interim scorings. The ability to move 2 dice together, very powerful, all sorts of abilities and stuff like that. And you were trying to, again, build up the city and have your fingerprints over as much of the kind of development of this area and time as possible. So that is Teotihuacan.
And number 1 is going to be Praga Kaput Regni, which is about Prague and about you building up Prague. Prague is a city in the Czech Republic. It's a wonderful city. I've actually been to Prague. It was amazing. It was one of my favorite cities I've ever been to. It was incredible. I loved it. So beautiful, such wonderful architecture. And so I really like this game because I've been there and it was really cool to be like, oh, I've been on the King Charles Bridge. I've been to this place before. That's really awesome. This is a Vladimir Suki game where you are building up Prague, and you have these action tiles that you are drafting that will usually come with some kind of bonus, and they're going to have 2 actions on them, and you'll choose one of them to do. And this is one of those games where there's kind of a bunch of different stuff you can focus on, and you kind of are usually going to focus on like 1 or 2 of them. You can't really do a little bit of all of them. That's not really the best way to play. You kind of have to choose a route and try and go for that. But you essentially can build up the cathedral and move up this cathedral track. You can build up the hunger wall and build up that. You can build walls around your personal part of the city. You can do a whole bunch of different stuff. And the cool thing about the game is there's this kind of interesting push and pull where if you're building up the hunger wall, for example, there are these certain tiles that allow you to move up that track. But to score that track, you need these blue tokens, but these blue tokens come from putting out the red tiles down in the plaza, which usually help you go up the cathedral track. So there's this interesting push and pull in this game where you need to focus on something, but you can't wholly focus on that because you actually won't be able to score it if you do. It's kind of weird to explain, but it's really, really good. And it's just so much fun. Every time we play this game, we're always just like, man, it's just so darn good. And it's got that Vladimir Suki thing where there's always going to be a way where you can collect something, in this case, these windows. You can collect these windows and you'll be able to take another turn. Vladimir Suki's been doing this a lot lately with their games where at some point you're going to try and essentially take a double turn. And being able to do that efficiently, be able to do that as much as possible is like really integral to the game. And that's very true with Praga Kaput Regni, where like taking 1 or 2 of those extra turns makes a huge difference because it's kind of like the norm now with Vladimir Suki games where you're going to get like 14 turns in the whole game. That's all you're doing. So you have to maximize those ones. And in Praga Kaput Regni, I think does it the best of all of them. I really, really love this game. And it's about building up Prague, a really wonderful city that I can't wait to go back to because I love it. So that is our number 1, Praga Kaput Regni. We love it.
So that is 10 city games. Again, at least a city name in the title of the old.
And they're usually about the city, building up the city, at least to some degree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, indeed. So that's our list.
That's our list. Give us your games, though. Again, so many classic games that fit this category. We'd love to hear about them. So many series and things. Stefan Feld's just doing like reskins of the games just around city names specifically. Yeah. It's like a current thing.
Yeah.
What's the city you want to see appear as a game?
Oh,
I want to see Trenton, New Jersey.
Trenton, New Jersey.
Why not?
I'm going to go with, I don't know. Cars? No, I'll say Carson City. It's a game about Carson City.
Don't you say Paris, man. Don't you
Sacramento,
say
where we're from.
Ooh, there you go.
Sure.
There you go. That's our list, everybody. I'll catch you next time. Bye. Bye.